Alrighty, well, good morning, everybody. There's Rocky. He's having a sleep on my legs. He is. He's on my legs. He is. He likes my legs. My legs are very sexy, you know. I have very sexy legs. Anyway, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, May the 19th, in the year of our Lord, 2025. Yeah. There's Rocky. It's another cold day. I've got the heater going because it's cold. It's funny, I was going to put the heater away because we had some nice weather last week. But I thought to myself, this is Canada, so I better not do that just yet. And I'm glad I didn't, because it's freaking cold now. It is. There's Rocky. He's going to sleep. See, there's my legs are. He's going to sleep on my legs. I have circulatory problems, though, and he's heavy. So I'll only be able to stand that for a little while, and then I'll have to make him move. But, yeah, that's the problem. Holy smokes. Yeah. Anyway, that's where we're at. That's what's going on. As I explained yesterday, the Buy Me a Coffee Fund is still up. At this point, basically, the Buy Me a Coffee Fund is paying the money, or is paying a little less per month than what I've lost due to losing the Ontario portion of my pension, of my disability payments, because I had the first month of the Buy Me a Coffee was an exceptionally good month of it, and so I've lost the disability. But anyway, I have a lawyer working on that, and it's looking optimistic. There's some things that I just won't talk about right at the moment. I'll feel more free to talk about them when the situation is resolved, and at that point I will. But at the moment, I won't talk about that stuff. But the lawyer has figured some things out anyway, and yeah. Anyway, like I say, I'll be able to talk about it at a future date. I haven't been advised not to talk about anything or anything like that, but I just figure it's just kind of common sense that you don't you don't say all you know, because you're the people you're dealing with. It may get back to them, and so you don't want to give everything away. And like I say, they may monitor this channel. I know I am watched and have been watched for decades by different government agencies. I'm actually considered a domestic terrorist, believe it or not. So I'm on a terror watch list and everything else in this country. And that's basically because I didn't concede. Did the police have the authority to impose their personal opinions as if they're laws? A lot of the police around here, at least, and I think it's true across the board, but I can only speak of my own experiences. There's a lot of police corruption in this area. And again, I think that's true across the board, but it's definitely true here in my experience. And a lot of the time, the police try to impose their personal preferences and their personal opinions as if they're laws. And most of the people around here are frightened enough of the police that they will just go along with that and not dispute it. In my case, I'll dispute it. I'm really big on human rights and stuff, and so I will dispute it. To give you an example, there was a man who lived in my hometown of Perth, Ontario, Canada, And his next door neighbor was an Ontario provincial police officer. Now, this was back in the early 2000s. It was back around 2000, 2001 in there. Anyway, that man owned a either an 82 or an 83 Pontiac Parisienne car. Now, the car was like new. Didn't have a spot of rust on it. It was meticulously maintained. And it looked just the way, if you could go back to 1983 and visit a General Motors dealership and look at the brand new Pontiac Parisiennes, that's what this car was like. It was immaculate. Anyway, the police officer next door didn't think people should drive old cars. And he didn't like seeing an old car in the driveway of the house next door. And so he threatened the man, and I know this story, he threatened the man that either you get rid of your old car or I'm going to use my powers as a police officer to make your life a living hell. Anyway, the man was going to be defiant and keep the car, but his wife threatened to leave him if he didn't get rid of it at that point because she was afraid of what the police officer would do. And so he ended up giving the car away to a cousin of his who lived up in the back country because he figured nobody's going to bother him up there. And that's what he did. And that's just a typical story of the sort of thing that happens in my area with the police anyway. So I had lots of run-ins with the police because I wasn't, and I got to be known as somebody who did not just unconditionally respect and obey the police. And therefore I am considered a terrorist. In Canada, that will make you a domestic terrorist. Because if you think you actually have rights and you think that the police shouldn't be allowed to enforce their personal opinions or their personal preferences as if they are in fact law. There's no law in Canada against driving an old car. Now, what they have done is they made it harder to get insurance for old cars. And they've made it harder to get old cars on the road and keep them on the road. If you're using the car as a daily driver, it's a lot harder to do now because they're throwing up a bunch of roadblocks. But even now, it isn't illegal. If you can get the insurance to daily drive it, then you're not breaking the law by doing that. It's just the insurance companies are throwing up a bunch of roadblocks now to try to prevent people from doing that. Anyway, it's still not a crime though, but the police will treat it as if it's a crime because most of them don't want people doing that. And that's their personal opinion and their personal preference. I was watching a video one time, a YouTube video where this man had bought a decommissioned police car at auction. And he was using it as his daily driver. It was a Ford Crown Victoria. It had the push bar on the front of it and stuff. Now, he wasn't impersonating a police officer. He wasn't telling people he was a police officer. He didn't have police markings or police lights on the car. He wasn't trying to pull people over or anything else. He wasn't doing any of that. He just bought the car and he was driving it as his daily driver. And the police continuously were pulling him over. And he asked the cop one time, why do you guys keep bothering me? Like, why are you pulling me over all the time? And the cop told him, we don't like people having these cars. Now, again, that's their personal preference. That's not the law. You can legally buy a decommissioned police car, and you can legally drive it as your car. You see, my answer to the police officer would have been, there's no law against it. You know, what you're doing is harassment because there's no law against me doing this. I'm not impersonating a police officer. I'm not using the car for any nefarious purpose. I'm literally using it to get myself around to the places I need to be. And you know, what you're doing is harassment. And if you feel that the public shouldn't be allowed to buy these cars, then you need to organize and you need to go to the government, if you and the other officers feel that way, and you need to propose that a law be passed to forbid members of the public like myself from being able to buy these cars at auction, you know, or to restrict the usage of them. If we do buy them, then we can only use them for certain purposes or whatever, you know. Maybe we can use them for parts to fix another car or something like that, but we can't drive them or whatever. That would be my answer to the cop. Because look, if I disagree with something that somebody's doing, just as a regular citizen, I don't have a right to interfere with that person because of it. If what they're doing is legal, then I don't have a right to harass them, you know? And the police really don't have that right either. Anyway, the guy was going to get rid of the car because he was fed up with the constant harassment from the police. See, I wouldn't get rid of the car. I'd start filing complaints, and I would go public. I would start recording my interactions with the police, and they'd be all over this channel is what would happen. Every time they got pulled over, there'd be another YouTube video to embarrass the cops who were doing it. And that's the reason that the police then labeled me a domestic terrorist, is because of things like that. And so, like I say, I know how it is here in this country, and I know that you really don't have rights, even though on paper you do, in practice you don't. I still try to exercise my rights, whether I have them or not, because I figure if I have them on paper, then I'm going to exercise them. Rocky's fast asleep. Quite the cat, I'll tell you. Look at his little ears. He's quite the cat, and his stripes and everything. He's a cutie, and his tail wrapped around there, going up to his face. Anyway, that's where we're at. Anyway, that's what's going on. But yeah, that's how it is here, though. So the bottom line is, there's always some battle to be fought. It seems like you got to fight for every little thing. And it gets kind of tiring. It wears you down some. It gets kind of sickening. But it is what it is. And if that's how it is, that's how it is. If I have to fight for every little thing, that's what I'll do. But I can't say that I think that it's right, that it's that way. But still, it is that way. So you got to live with things as they are, not however you think they should be. But anyway, it's looking optimistic that I'll be able to get my disability payments back, and there's a reason for that. That like I say, I won't get into it right now, but I will update you all when I know more. I don't think it's right that people who are basically the government of Ontario has shifted the burden of looking after me to the people who contribute to the Buy Me a Coffee Fund, many of whom aren't even residents of Ontario, many of whom live in different countries. It's not right that somebody living in the United States or Australia or some other country like that should have to pick up the slack for the government of Ontario. And I mean, I'm on the pension for a reason, or the disability. I guess it's not a pension, really. I call it that, but that's not really what it is. My social worker actually corrected me one day about that. Told me in no uncertain terms that what I'm on is not a pension. But the bottom line is this. I was granted it for a reason. It's not really that easy to get. They reject most of the people who apply for it, at least at first, and you have to keep reapplying and stuff. It's really not that easy to get. And so yeah, and it doesn't pay enough to live on. That's the reason I started the Buy Me a Coffee fund, is because I literally ran out, even as a homeless person, I ran out of money. And in February, I was going to freeze to death because I was running out of propane and I had no money to buy more. That's how bad things got here in February. And so, like I say, I'm not a bum. I do work as much as I can. I do what I can to help myself. I admit it isn't enough. I do need the extra help from the government. I wish I didn't, because I don't like the government, you know. Plus, I lost my health due to the fact that they used me as a guinea pig for medical experiments when I was 8 years old. I tell that story in some other videos. I was given massive doses of haloperidol, which crippled me and caused me to have seizures and crippled me and everything else, temporarily crippled me. I was given LSD on 2 separate occasions. That's acid. I mean, imagine giving an 8-year-old boy acid. Like, you gotta be a truly evil prick to do something like that. But they did. And all this was done with the blessing of our government. And there was a lot of that happening in Canada at the time. One documented case of it is the case of Dr. Ewan Cameron, who worked in Montreal back in the 50s and 60s. Pardon me with my coughing and clearing my throat. I'm getting sick now because of the change in the weather. And this is another thing that happens to me since all this drug experimentation was done. But just look up on the story of Ewan Cameron. There's videos about him on YouTube. And about the atrocities he committed against his patients. That was done at the behest of the CIA and U.S. drug companies with the blessing of the government of Canada. And that man, he tortured people. He literally tortured people. And like I say, our government knew about it and actually blessed his efforts. So that's how it is here. That's just how it's always been here. And most of the Canadian people are very deferential to authority. And if you speak against authority, or if you defy authority, which I've done both in my lifetime, then you are seen as the problem. It isn't the corrupt authority that's the problem. It's you who are going against the corrupt authority who are the problem. So, anyway, that's how it is here. It's changing a bit. I believe the trucker convoy during the whole COVID thing changed a lot of people's attitudes. But there's a lot of people in Canada who really hate what those people did. And it makes them very angry, too. So, I mean, there's a lot of people in Canada who still would say, if you're going against the authority, you are the problem. you know. And it's the same thing if you stand up to somebody who's victimizing you in Canada, if you stand up to a bully, then you are automatically regarded as the problem because it said that you are now escalating the confrontation by standing up for yourself. So it's not the fault of the bully who initiated the confrontation, it's your fault for not backing down from the bully and, in fact, escalating the situation. Also, in Canada, we don't have a right to defend ourselves. You don't have a right to self-defense in Canada. They claim that you do have some limited right to self-defense, but in practice, you really don't. If some predatory person comes after you to hurt you, you're going to be required to let them do that and then to call the authorities and trust them to deal with it. That's what you're supposed to do in Canada. There is no stand your ground here or anything like that. The police chief of Toronto told the people to hang their car keys right at their front door so that when the people come to take their car, the thieves, all they got to do is kick the door in and take the keys, and they don't have to go right into the house looking for them. That's actually the advice. Make it easy for the thieves to take your car so that there isn't a bigger confrontation because you didn't make it easy for them to do so. That was the advice of the police chief of Toronto. I mean, imagine in Texas or Florida or someplace like that, a police chief giving that kind of advice. You know, there's one guy down in Florida, one police chief, who says basically, if somebody comes to your house and is committing a crime, you'll be doing us a favor if you shoot them graveyard dead. I can't think of his name now, but he's a cop and he goes on YouTube quite a bit. You see him on his news conferences and stuff. He's a police chief down there in one of the counties in Florida, and that's what he says. You wouldn't get that up here, I'll tell you. But anyway, that's where we're at here. But anyway, thank you to those who have contributed to the Buy Me a Coffee Fund. It has helped me out. I withdrew the balance on Friday. Well, on Wednesday. On Tuesday, I put in to withdraw it. On Wednesday, the process started, and on Friday, the money went into my account. And that was, I forget the exact figure now, but it was over $200. It was approximately what the government of Ontario would be paying me if they hadn't cut me off. So it at least supplements that. So now the balance is at zero again anyway. I mean, like I say, I am appreciative of everybody who's contributed. And I'm appreciative of everybody who watches the channel, whether you contribute or not, you know. And I know times are hard, and a lot of people just can't afford even to look after themselves, you know. It's terrible the way things are now. And what's frustrating to me about it is that it's all being done on purpose. It doesn't have to be this way, but it's being done to us on purpose, and that's a very frustrating thing. It's a tough thing. But like I said, anyway, what's happened to me with regard to the Ontario Disability Support Program, what was done this year was wrong. My lawyer has confirmed that it was wrong, that things weren't done the way they were supposed to be done. And so, for that reason, we think we have some grounds to appeal the decision, even though the time limit has passed. There's other things that happened. I wasn't aware of what was really going on. I'll just put it that way. But I am aware of it now, And I'm glad that I brought the lawyer into it. She seems to be very smart, and she seems to know what she's doing. And after all, this is her thing. This is what she does for a living. So she's seen it all, I'm sure, by now. So she knows what's going on with these disability support payments and stuff. Anyway, I've done everything I was supposed to do, and I am allowed to bring a lawyer into the situation. I have that right, and I'm exercising that right. Some people in Canada might say that I'm making trouble by doing that, because that seems to be the attitude here, that you can never go against authority. Although, like I say, that is slowly changing. But there are times, there's a reason lawyers exist. You may not like the idea that people will go against authority figures. You may see that as a destabilizing and disrupting thing for society and so on, and that we should all just be like robots and be obedient. And that way we have a nice, orderly Canadian society. But the thing is, our authority figures in this country right now are purposely creating disorder and chaos, and they're doing it because of the globalist agenda. And even if they weren't, even prior to them doing that, we had lawyers. Lawyers were a thing even prior to that, and there's a good reason for that, because sometimes people are not treated fairly. Sometimes the government doesn't treat you fairly, and sometimes you need a lawyer to help you, because you can't navigate that system on your own. And even if you're smart and you're enough to do it, you won't be allowed to do it. A judge will arbitrarily rule against you, even if the judge knows you're in the right. And they'll do it because you didn't hire a lawyer. So I had that happen one time in traffic court. I had that happen where they knew darn well I was innocent of the charges, and I had proven my case, and the judge still convicted me. And the judge even acknowledged that I had proven my case, but she said she was going to convict me anyway. And she did. And at one point, the judge scolded me for not hiring a lawyer. During my trial, she actually scolded me for not hiring a lawyer. So, I mean, this is what we're up against here. That's how it is here. Anyway, that's it. We're not free, but still, I choose to exercise the rights that I'm told I have. And I'm going to continue doing that. They're going to be passing bills soon. This new Prime Minister, Carney, wants to revive Bill C-63. And if Bill C-63 goes through, a lot of people like me are going to jail. And even if I were to obey that law and to shut up and not talk the way I do, it wouldn't matter, because they'd go back through my social media and find out stuff that I did post previous. Like they'd find this video, for example, and this video would be enough to get me thrown into jail. And so, and anyway, it's not in my character to give in to things like that. So I am going to continue to be outspoken, but it will mean that I will go to jail. At some point, I'll be arrested and I'll be taken to jail for the things that I say here. So, I mean, I already know that's coming. If this bill passes, and this bill will probably pass, because they've got Parliament stacked in their favor, and they've got the Bloc Québécois now wanting to make an alliance with them, just like the NDP made an alliance with the Trudeau government to pass all kinds of laws that should never have been passed. Now the Bloc Québécois is wanting to do that, and that will give them enough votes to get whatever they want to put through. So yeah, it's very corrupt anyway. If you look up Bill C-63 and read it, It's called the Online Harms Act. And they hide behind the idea of, restricting people, going after people who are exploiting children, like you were, posting child pornography and stuff like that. But that's all a smokescreen. If you look into it deeper, you'll find out that anything at all that the powers that be deem misinformation or deem offensive is criminalized under this law. They're just using, because then they can turn around and say, "Oh, you object to us cracking down on child pornographers, so you like child pornographers." See, they can use that then to shut you up and to shame you into silence, and this is the sort of thing they do. The thing is, in Canada, we already have laws against that. We already have laws against distributing and sharing and producing and so on that sort of material, a material that sexually exploits children. We already have protections in place and laws in place about that. So that part of Bill C-63 is redundant. We already have a law that deals with that. But what they do is that's the smoke screen that they hide behind, what they censor, any criticism of government and so on like that. Anything the government deems to be hate speech, which can simply be disagreeing. If you disagree with the government about man-made climate change or about the COVID shots and the mandates that were imposed during COVID, or about the LGBTQ and the agenda there. If you disagree with the government about any of that, that can be deemed hate speech under Bill C-63, and it can earn you up to, not necessarily life in prison, but up to life in prison. So it could be life in prison. They give people life in prison in this country for committing murder. If I go out right now and I kill somebody, just in cold blood, just cold-bloodedly murder somebody, in this country, I'll get life in the penitentiary for doing that. But they want to pass a law that says that the things that I'm saying right now will get me the same treatment as if I killed somebody. That's how crazy things are here. Anyway, I'm on a bit of a rant. I guess I should shut up now. I've made my point. I'm aware of the danger in saying the things that I say, and I choose to say them because I think they need to be said. I think somebody needs to say these things. And there are a few of us who are willing to say them, and we all know the risk. We all know what we're up against. Rocky's having a dream. Look at his face twitching there. He's having a dream. We all know what we're up against here. We're all aware of the risk of what we're doing. There's none of us that is stupid. In fact, it's those of us who see things as they are that are speaking out because we recognize how necessary that is. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you all later. I'm not going to jail just yet. The bill hasn't been passed yet. It's coming, and I'm already trying to figure out all the details of how I'm going to deal with it when I do get taken to jail for saying these things, because I'm anticipating that will happen. It's already happening in England. Just look what's happening in England now. They're arresting people and taking them to jail because they said things that the government doesn't want them saying. That's what they want to bring here. Anyway, that's it. We'll talk to y'all later.